Hey Arjun, welcome to D2C Podcast by GoKwik. Super glad to have you. We've got a lot of requests from our internal folks as well as a lot of D2C enthusiasts who wanted to listen to you and understand from you your vantage point. You built a company, sold that, and now an investor in the space. You have been a supporter of D2C, watched this space closely, have seen this grow. So thanks so much for taking out time, and it'll be a great conversation with you.
Well, thanks, Chirag. I think we're obviously at an interesting place right now. We've seen what's happened over the last 2 years as well. From the time that you started GoKwik, our first conversation, we've seen lots of changes, lots of evolution, lots of good and lots of new in the ecosystem. So excited to deep dive with you and really add some value to people who are listening in terms of what's happening in the world that we are talking about so much.
I think let's start with the first question, which keeps at least all of us intrigued. That what does it take for someone to build a D2C brand? What kind of muscles should they be building? And it'll differ from, let's say, day one to post PMF to a growth stage, right? But specifically, when somebody's thinking about starting out, what's your playbook? How do you think? How do you advise that people should go about it?
Yeah, so look, I put a post on the Sarah as well about how tough it is to build a D2C brand, right? Because if I go back to my experience, I was 25 years old, give or take, when I started, and I was doing manufacturing as well, right? We had a factory where we made our products. So think about what I was having to take care of, right? It was supply chain, procurement, manufacturing, compliance, production schedule, sales, distribution, marketing strategy, HR, legal, IT, admin, and fundraising, right? I think there were 17 things that I won't even call them departments or verticals because it was a very small company at that time. And so it's hard work, right? It's really hard work. And I eventually convinced my fiance, who was my girlfriend first and then became my fiance, Trisha, to join the business. But I think it's not talked about enough how much multitasking you have to do as a D2C founder, right? So at one point you're giving OTPs to your finance team, the next time you're talking to a prospective brand ambassador, then you're figuring out why your ROAS on Facebook is low, and then you're trying to figure out if your stock will come in time for the increase in demand in festive sales, right? So it's hard work. There's lots of moving parts to it. But if I was to break it up into largely 8 modules, right, or 8 steps to a journey, starts with why are you going D2C? What's the space you're entering, and what do unit economics mean? Does this business even make sense viably in the online space? Then you move to your product, right? What is the product? What is the space, the market? What's the solution you have? And what's your right to win, right? And then developing this product, launching this product. Then you move to brand and building a brand that's more than just a logo. So vision, mission statement, qualities, etc. And you move to your storefront, which is your website, and sort of making that conversion easy. Then your marketplace strategy as well, right? So how do you leverage off marketplaces? Customer acquisition comes next, which is how do you bring these customers to your channel or cart then? Then the sort of nuance of an e-commerce or a D2C business is retention. So you have rich data of names, addresses, phone numbers, and products the customers bought. How do you bring them back and consume? With retention, also the part that's not talked about enough is operations. Supply chain, logistics, warehousing, delivery in time. And then eventually from there, once you've completed the journey of order, delivery, and retention, then scale. By thinking of team, culture, hyperscaling. So 8 buckets to the journey of D2C, but lots of multitasking along the way.
Yeah, and it's you put it nicely that at least you've thought through this, that there are now 8 buckets to think about, and it might be different for different kind of businesses, but isn't this too much to manage for somebody who's starting out, who has an idea? And the beauty of internet was that you could start, or everything became marginal cost because of internet, right? and then again that if you have to think about 10 other things, then how do you advise people that, okay, is there a 80/20 there? You think about this first and then go about, okay, there is a leaky bucket on the other one also, it's okay because you can fix it later. But there are certain things, if you get them wrong day one, then it's like one way door and then you can't possibly correct it.
Yeah, I think it is. And so there are stages and phases, right? In phase one, I would say the only thing you need to do is get your product right, launch your brand, and bring customers in, right? Like the 0 to 50 order a day journey is, I need to acquire customers and see if they're even sort of interested in buying my products. Phase two, which would be 50 to 1,000 orders a day, is then, okay, I'm bringing these customers. How do I scale them? How do I launch more products? How do I bring them back? And how do I really win on maybe more than one channel? So I started my website. Now, how do I start winning on more channels? And the 1,000 to sort of infinite order journey, that's the phase three, which is where you start thinking of, hey, is my bucket leaky? What's my specific ROAS? How can I make that more efficient? Do I need to hire a bigger team? Do I need to have multiple warehouses to improve the speed of fulfillment, etc. Right? So it's phase one, get the customers. Phase two, grow the customers. Phase three, make the business and the entire infrastructure efficient. And I think each phase has its own sort of interesting parts to it. And I enjoy meeting people across phases. And I think for me, one thing I will say is that when I launched in 2017, you could take your time on phase one, right? And also make mistakes with the basics as well. Today, while the number of customers online has increased significantly, and we saw 80 million people shopped in just the 22nd to 30th September, right? The Red Sea data came out today. That's huge numbers. But with those huge numbers, there's a large number of brands that have entered the ecosystem, right? Post-COVID, I would say in each space, 2x, 5x, or 10x the number of brands. And so the ability to take your time and make mistakes with your basics is not there anymore. You have to get your basics right from day one, right? And that's why, Chirag, we spent time teaching as well, because the 1 year that I had to learn my basics is now 8 weeks or 12 weeks.
No, I think I would highly recommend people who are thinking about D2C that they should be joining your growth school, course. I think it's very, very informative. And at least one could learn from your mistakes and not do those mistakes. Maybe they can make fresher mistakes and learn from what all we all have been doing. But I think you made some few interesting points here that at least a lot of founders ask us that, okay, should we begin our journey on D2C or should we begin our journey on marketplace? Is there a prescribed formula there? Is there a category specific nuance there? How do you think about it?
This is omni-channel debate, right? I think first you'll ask the question website or marketplace, then you'll say, okay, website, marketplace, now should I do export, should I do offline, etc., all of that. My view, and Chirag, you're seeing so many brands as well, so I'd love to get your view. My view today is slightly different from my view 1.5 years ago. My view 1.5 years ago is your website is your channel where you own the customer, you own the data, like focus extensively on your website and then use marketplaces as an opportunistic tactical platform, because that's what we did at Dr Vaidya, right? Reality has changed today. Competition has increased, CAC has increased. And so now my view is actually D2C or e-commerce is a channel where data tells you the answer to your question, right? So if you're seeing that you're available on both channels, let's say your website and Amazon, and there's a higher growth velocity, a higher sales volume, a lower customer acquisition cost, a better ROAS, your customer and the data is telling you, hey, I want to buy you on Amazon, not your website, right? So deep dive on that channel. So my view on channel is where your customer wants to buy you now, which is changed from my view as I was building Dr. Vaidya's. But what is your sort of read on this one?
Yeah, I think I would totally agree that the times have changed. I think in 2020, when, or 2021, we were looking at, or there were tailwinds for e-commerce, D2C, and hence, it was the motto. I think now, and since you also mentioned that the number of brands in this space have increased, the way at least I look at this is that if the search keywords have transformed from, let's say, people searching for face wash to Mama Earth face wash, then I think, marketplace, you are giving them something instead of they giving you something. So then it's time to move that traffic to D2C. If you can still find keywords which are generic and you want to extract that sale from marketplace, right? So because as marketplaces get into that space where they're going to increase commissions, so it will become increasingly profitable or viable to build out or even out your business on D2C. That's how at least I think. And I keep a close watch on these keywords, that what keywords have started to trend, and then, where is the space occurring. And if you are creating let's say if you're trying to create a brand in beauty and personal care, which is a new proposition, people don't know about it, then all the more, selling a story is easier on D2C than on a marketplace, where, as a consumer, you come with a view, right? That this is okay, this is what it is available here, etc., etc. So in that way, D2C becomes an easier way to, sell your story, and then you use marketplace to make it more unit economically viable, scalable. At least that's how I think. And I think a similar debate, Arjun, occurs on, when you're starting out your business, how much you should be spending on performance versus brand. And luckily, I think now everyone has started to realize that these D2C businesses are brand businesses, right? So how do you balance both? I remember in 2021, people used to say that this is a tech business because tech valuations were there. Now I think, and we saw a post from DSG Ventures wherein they said that, these businesses are consumer, we are not tech fund, etc., etc. So I think that's starting to come out, and market has also started to realize that these are fairly long-term, sustainable, less risky businesses, right? Which have a proven thesis, and we have seen multiple posts on this by you and by some other known people who have been pointing out that not only this is an India opportunity for brands, this is a Southeast Asia, Middle East opportunity for brands to go, and we are seeing multiple brands go to Middle East and starting to capture. But coming back, how do you see this performance versus brand conundrum? That how should one shift, when should one shift, and you have traveled that journey?
I think it's a great question. And I did performance marketing. I'll be honest. I built my brand on performance marketing. The time was different. It was 2017, 2018. The number of brands was less. The number of advertisers was less. There was nobody leveraging of the Ayurveda opportunity. And so I got decent ROS. I could build a strong business. Today, you can't just do performance marketing because the number of brands and the competition is significant, right? And so what do you need to think about as a brand owner? I think you need to realize that you are building a brand. And so you need to be rigid about some amount of top of the funnel of brand spend every month, right? So what's the easiest thing to do? What's the ROI on content, video, influencers, brand marketing? What's the ROI? I don't know, right? And so I can't do it because there's no ROI. But the reality is that if you don't do it, your brand doesn't stand out through the clutter. There are 30 brands selling a similar product. The customer doesn't know what the difference between you and the other brands is. And so actually, brand marketing counterintuitively over time increases the efficacy of performance marketing because the brand recall already exists with the customer, right? And so I think from that perspective, even though counterintuitive, my advice or my view on this is earmark a percentage of your marketing budget every month for a sustained period of time. Not, okay, I spent 10 lakhs this month, now I won't spend for 5 months. Okay, I want to spend 10%, 20%, 25% of my marketing budget on brand. If the budget is 1 crore, I will spend 10 lakhs. If the budget is 2 crores, I'll spend 20 lakhs. But every month I will spend on a consistent basis. Because you spend for 1 month and what's the biggest mistake you can do? You have a brand marketing budget for the year of 2 crore rupees. You spend 1.5 crores 1 month, get a celebrity, and then don't have any budget to amplify that. That's a big mistake, right? I mean, that sort of is counterproductive. So I would say be rigid about your percentage spend on brand and continue it on a sustainable basis. You will see over a period of time, not on day one, but over a period of time, 3 months, 6 months, the efficacy of your performance marketing and your ROAS will increase.
Totally, I think, and at least the way I think about this is that brands, if you want to, or brand expenditure is more long-term in nature, right? While performance marketing is short-term sales. And also, I am a strong believer of solving things at source, solving problems at source. So brand marketing is really solving problem at source, that you are influencing at the top, that okay, this is what we stand for as a brand. And then, if there is recollection association with the customer, then they come in with that view that okay, in our world we like to look at this as that, for example, if you have pay in EMIs as a payment option in your payment stack, not only does it increase your conversion, but it also gets you more customers, because once you start to advertise top of the funnel that you have pay in EMIs, more people suddenly feel that they can afford this, right? So that's the top of the funnel effect.
Example, actually, the EMI example. Yeah, it's a nice corollary actually.
Correct. So at least I like to explain it this way.
But Chirag, tell me something. I wanted to ask you, right? When I started, what you were doing or what you do currently would not have even been a thought, right? Like in 2016, 2017, the way we ran our e-commerce businesses on Excel, we didn't understand load speeds, conversion, checkout page, load time, conversion time, efficiency of checkout. What can you do to prevent RTOs, etc., all of that, right? And that's changed. So when you speak to founders today, right, how easy is it to explain the problems you're explaining? And what's the sort of maturity level of founders today in understanding these problems? Because I was totally oblivious of this problem in 2017. Now I totally understand the problem GoKwik is solving, but I was oblivious of the problem when I started off.
I think that's a super valid and super great question. I would say that in e-commerce, and I think as humans also, we tend to get more associated with problems which are very close or nearby or recent, right? And how do you solve for things which are going to occur, let's say, in future? And typically, you would have also seen in businesses that businesses are made where tailwinds are there and which are going to be, let's say, in 10 years. Right? Because if you're solving an existing problem, mostly it's going to be crowded. So, and in e-commerce specifically, while people would know a lot of these surface problems, but there are many hidden problems, right? Which we are now talking about. RTO, of course, has become a painful problem in our country. People will realize that trust is going to be the next big problem, right? Because a lot of customers have started to ask us that, okay, everyone started to say organic, but what is organic now? Right? Amazon has solved it for themselves.
Real reviews.
And then there is an enablement player required there, right? Which is going to, if it doesn't happen, then unfortunately this space will not grow, because people will not have trust, and hence, they will not buy here, they'll buy on Amazon. So it's a flywheel business. So, and to your point that, of course, because we are, a category creator of sorts, we have to invest in educating the market also in terms of, okay, these are the problems, this is how you measure. We have in fact gone out deeper, that's why we hired some of these very, very senior Amazon folks who have done, conversion rates, etc., deeply, right? And now we are educating founders, performance marketers, senior marketing leaders that, okay, it's not about, holistic conversion rates. You can, of course, improve conversion rates, but how? Let's go double click on that. Let's look at new versus repeat. Is there repeat, which is having a higher conversion rate? Do you want to increase AOV? All of that stuff, which, helps really improve gross margin. Those are the stuff which you should be looking at, right? So it's no more about only one holy grail metric. I like to say that a map is not the territory. So you would want to look at broadly that CR as a metric, but then when you go deeper, it will be intermingled with many, many other things. What kind of traffic are you building? What retention, etc., etc. So to your point, I think there are certain problems which have become large enough. So there, obviously, people have realized that we don't have to educate on the need. For example, WhatsApp as a solution. Everyone today knows that as a D2C business, you need WhatsApp as a solution. So the need is established. Whereas for example, trust or solving for, let's say, higher return windows, refunds, etc., there is still, emerging need where people are where we have to educate and say, okay, this is what we have built, and you will require, this is a better experience. Brands which are early adopters are typically the first ones to adopt, and then followed by others.
Agree. Absolutely. And Chirag, one more question, right? From my perspective, um, when you think of um, problems that brands face, see, you have a vantage point. You work with 200 plus brands now, and so you see what the experience the brand is facing across various brands, right? If we are to look forward, because I think it's important to look forward now, our industry has matured over the last 5 years, like I would have never expected. If you are to look forward, um, where are brands stuck today? What are the existential questions founders are asking, and what do we need to solve going forward?
No, I think one of the points, at least, which I am realizing is, and I think the narrative has changed also, that it's become very clear that this is not a tech business. So you need people who are deep in tech to solve for some of these problems. That's becoming increasingly clear. I think last year, it wasn't clear, but I think people have realized to our thesis also that this is a very different DNA of building a consumer product business versus this. So what it also means is that you start to visualize yourself as a brand business. And brand business means that, okay, there is one channel which you started with, or is, let's say, 25, 30, 40% of the business, or maybe initial days 70, 80% of the business. But once you start to visualize your business as a brand business, then you know that, okay, I need to sell on other channels also, right? I need to figure out, depending on the category, I'll figure out what other channels will work for me, right? It's not that I'm going to spend only on this, etc., etc. So that's one, I think, unbottlenecking which is already started to happen. Wherein earlier people used to think that, okay, I'm going to do only D2C and not do other channels. But now I think people have started to realize that I need to do offline also. And maybe I have seen some brands leverage the fact that as offline opened up, they over-indexed on offline and then scaled faster, right? So you need to seize the moment. I think context changed, tailwinds changed, and then people grew faster. So that was one. And I think, from a talent point of view, from a marketing talent point of view also, I think that's one bottleneck which I'm seeing, that if you get a really tier one talent in marketing also, specifically digital marketing, etc., that just gives you a very, very high leverage in this business. So that's another one. And I think what is what trend I'm definitely seeing is large ones, specifically as the macro has trended down, large ones have started to become larger. All of them are well capitalized. They have a good PMF. They have very large scale established. So all of them are really scaling well. They're seizing the opportunity. The small ones, or the pre-PMF ones, is where the struggle is. And that's where, you and I should be spending more time helping them navigate this pre-PMF journey. They are in that zone where they're not able to fundraise, limited on resources, as you said, 17 other problems to take care of. How do you prioritize? How do you figure out that, okay, I have PMF? And the fundraising aspect, in spite of the fact that you have PMF, is not easy. It's no more a FOMO world which was there last year. It's still easy for consumer brands as compared to tech, but it's no more as easy as 2021. You need to prove unit economics, PMF, scale, repeat, all of that stuff before it starts to go.
I agree. Absolutely. So that's where we should be spending our time.
Yeah. And I think I catch, help early brands. And by the way, people are coming up with fantastic propositions. I think we are at that stage where, from a PPP point of view, my son asked me, I think he was looking at some category, or we were in some grocery store, and he said that, why is this unbranded? Then I was explaining him that India is a low PPP country, and people will move from unbranded to branded now. I think we are at that inflection point where you will see people just massively move from unbranded to branded. And just because I think India as a country is very heterogeneous, so you will have multiple brands.
Yeah, there are many countries in one country, right? As you said, there are many countries.
The brands is that a brand can't appeal to everyone. That's why brands exist. So you will have multiple brands appealing to multiple strata. Somebody who's conscious or natural, organic, etc., massive penetration. And I think, which takes me to a relevant thing, since we were speaking about investment. Because you now don the hat of an investor as well, how do you look at this space from an investor point of view? specifically, growth stage separate. I think you look at primarily at early stage. How do you look at what are the important matrices, qualities in a team? Tell me more about it.
Yeah, Chirag, to be honest, I think you were talking about tech business versus consumer business, etc. All of that. I think my view never changed. I always viewed consumer brands as consumer businesses. And consumer businesses have to have a real P&L, right? That's the reality. So there will be sales, there will be returns, there will be net revenue, gross margin, CAC, logistics cost, payment gateway and other charges, and then eventually a contribution margin. And then below that an EBITDA, right? Metrics I look at: growth velocity, pace of growth at the early stage, quality of revenue. That's really important. And you can use various metrics, including CAC, website, marketplace split, level of discounting, etc. All of that to a certain base. Customer acquisition cost is a paramount metric today, and really, really important to sort of keep in mind. It should be at a relevant place in relation to your gross margin, else you're in deep trouble. I think for certain businesses, go or no go is logistics cost. Sometimes logistics cost balloons above 20%. You realize that maybe it's not the right category, right? Because high volume, low value product. And then repeat rate of the various metrics to look at LTV and percentage repeat, etc. All of that, but a healthy repeat rate. And then the bottom line metric, at least on an operational basis, if not on a business EBITDA level, at least what is it looking like? Are you making money on the first order? Are you breaking even on the first order? I think that's the way I assess a consumer business. And then you have some intangibles like brand equity, social media presence, engagement rate, real customer love. I think these things put together would help me at least determine the health of an opportunity in a consumer business.
Interesting. And also tell us more about that. At least my view is that India is a hard, or probably the hardest country to build a business. What do you think about it? Because PPPs are low, and I would want to not lead you to an answer. Would love to know from you.
Yeah, look, I think there are lots of challenges with building a business in India. Right? Many countries in one country, big country in terms of land mass, heterogeneous population, but there are also lots of positives. What are the positives? We have a 1.3 billion plus size of population. We're probably the youngest population in the world. The middle class is more than 650 million people. We are largely unbranded but moving towards branding. There is aspiration in this country. The economy is free and open. In India, Facebook is Facebook, Google is Google, and Apple is Apple. So the economy is free and open. And so you're talking to, but you're talking to a very biased customer, right? I wear this band with the Indian flag on my hand every day. I'm long on the India opportunity. I think we are fundamentally brand starved as an economy. There is one thing though I will say, right? As urban elite consumers, we sometimes have our individual personality bias when we go into building brands, right? The challenge with building consumer brands is that we consume these products, and so our individual bias comes in a lot. And so I think there is a large TAM, a large market, and a large opportunity, but the opportunity doesn't only exist in our cities and our households. There's a much larger opportunity outside.
Absolutely. I think you've touched a valid point here. That I think thinking that everyone is like us, that's at least our inherent bias in every human being. And also then thinking that, okay, people are going to live in like societies like us, etc., etc. How are you thinking? The beauty of internet, at least theoretically, was that we could find more Arjuns who are staying in tier 3, tier 4, tier 2 cities, who have money in their pocket but are, do not have access to all these products, brands. How are you seeing the emergence of tier 3, tier 4 in the overall D2C businesses, and how can people leverage that part beautifully well?
Yeah, so Dr. Vaidya's was 82% outside top 10 cities. Our customers were in Anantnag, Muzaffarnagar, Trichy and Imphal, not in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore. I saw the Red Seer data for the festive sales. 65% of orders came from outside metros. How can you leverage or understand these customers? Go, visit, spend some time, speak to customers, pick up the phone. That's the way to understand. And I think there's a huge opportunity, huge opportunity. As long as you're open to having the conversation. Right? I had Manish from Purple on my podcast most recently. He does 50 customer calls a month, even though he's a unicorn, right? And I think that's the way to do it.
No, absolutely. I think just being close to the customer, and I think we tend to have a lot of biases, our views, etc., etc. I think all of those get squashed, or the life is easier if you're close to the customer.
Yeah, I launched a hangover product. That was the first product I launched at Dr. Vaidya. It's called Live It Out. It never scaled. I enjoyed the product. I love the product. I still use the product, but it never scaled because the market was just very small.
Yeah. So I think that's tricky. That how do you, and especially I think someone asked me in some podcast. I have discovered this hack of how do you, because an entrepreneur will have their own views. That's why they exist. And then how do you keep your view married with what market is saying? I think one book, which at least, or one theory which has helped me is the thinking in bets part, which helps me dissociate you from this equation. That it's no more about me. It's about getting, that, let's say if you want to serve people via Ayurveda, then okay, this is one product. Let's say if that has a probability of hitting 5%, 10%, or maybe, initially I felt 50% to what you said. Then over time you figure out that, okay, there are 10 other things which I can do. Which increase the probability of serving that or acquiring that customer via Ayurveda and serving their needs, etc., etc. So at least that's what, at least it seems, at least works for me. Awesome. I thought that we will do some new format thing in terms of asking you a few rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
And this is all related to D2C only. So what's your favorite brand in India?
Dr. Vaidya's. But if I was to say outside of Dr. Vaidya's, real brands and powerful brands, I love Sleepy Owl. I love Whole Truth. I love Mama Earth. And I love Boat. And I'll tell you why I love Boat. Recent example. I was in the gym day before yesterday. And as I got out of the gym, I saw someone's bike helmet where my shoes were. We take off our take off our shoes before we go into the gym, or we change shoes, etc. And the bike helmet had a sticker saying "I'm a boat head." Boat doesn't sell bikes. Boat doesn't sell bike helmets. They sell headphones. But this person got that sticker and put it on their bike helmet. That's a cult brand. So I would say that's a big step. And by the way, 5 years ago, nobody knew what Boat was.
Yeah. I remember those days when I spoke to Aman and he used to say that people are saying that this is a commodity business, everyone is going to import. But I think people who understood brand, that this is going to become a lifestyle, this has become a wearable category, I think those people got it. And of course, Aman being Aman, hum bhi kar lenge, and he did it. So that's there. And I think what's so very, very, I think exciting, and I totally agree with you on Mama Earth and in fact Whole Truth also. I love the way Shashank has built this. I met him a few weeks back, and just the sheer passion of building something which is true, lived by the brand and lived by himself. And to quote his words, that जब भी मैं product launch करता हूँ, आप ठोक बजा के customer से पूछ लो, my product wins. So that's his word.
Outside of our D2C space is Ultra Human. Big fan of the way they built the brand. It's beautiful.
Ultra Human is also great. Yeah, I'm have you for some other conversation, but they have to, at least I have been hearing that it's a great use case to discover what you should be eating, what you should not be eating, but how do you build the repeat use case?
I just got the product today, so I'm yet to try it.
Correct. Yeah, but they built out a good brand. And similarly, what famous brands or what brands do you look up to internationally?
Nike and Apple.
Yeah, I think Apple that way is, I think they've got many things right. It's not only brand, just that the product is super class. They have a cult. They charge such premium and still are able to get it.
But I tell you why I like Nike, because for a very, very long time they've stayed relevant. for a very long.
And I think they will continue to be relevant. They might just go on and off, but I think just because their association with sports and just do it is actually a cult association, which they will continue to have. And a couple of more questions. One tip as a founder you would want to give?
Entrepreneurship is not what the newspapers say. Fight failure with grit and resilience. That's the hallmark of a good entrepreneur.
Correct. I think one question around this which I would want to ask you is, what is one thing which you will tell us and we will still commit it as a mistake? As a founder, you will tell us that, okay, everyone goes through this and we will still commit that mistake.
I think it's honestly on team. I feel like there is a balance, right? You need to have a strong team, but you can't overstack your team, and it's a really tough balance, right? I sometimes meet founders like me who just try to do everything themselves, and then I sometimes meet founders who have built teams for 3 years out today, right? And then that's also a challenge, right? So getting the right balance in team is yeah, it's a tough one.
Interesting. And one tip as an investor to fellow founders?
I don't consider myself the typical investor type, but I would say one thing, yeah. A pitch call is not a monologue; it should be a dialogue. If you only speak, and then at the end of the call, the time is over, and yeah, there's no fun there.
I think that's a very valid point, that how do you engage? And specifically on Zoom, it becomes even more challenging.
Yeah.
How do you keep the conversation interesting, engaging? That just says a lot about your selling ability. And I think it becomes even harder when you don't have an Indian on the other side. I have been in those situations where I'm presenting to someone very senior who's sitting out of SF, and probably has heard something about us, and then trying to explain them. But I think just getting that chord right, getting some chemistry going, that's a great one. Interesting. I think with that, we come to an end of the D2C podcast with Arjun. Super great to have you, and thank you so much for spending time with us. Thanks, Arjun.
Chirag, my pleasure.